Hi, I'm Megan Sorrentino. I'm head instructor at Classical Horsemanship in Fort Collins, Colorado. Today we're going to be talking to you about work in hand. A lot of people don't know what work in hand is or what that phrase means. Work in hand is a type of groundwork that we do to prepare our horses to carry the weight of the rider. Most people that do groundwork do some form of liberty work, so like round penning and stuff like that. The problem with doing liberty work is unless you have a horse that already carries themselves very well to carry the weight of the rider, when you do liberty work, you're just training in the horse's natural posture. People ask me a lot of times, why don't horses already know how to carry the weight of the rider? And the answer is the horses weren't genetically designed to carry us. They were genetically designed to eat grass with their head down all day, which is not the most efficient way for them to carry the weight of the rider. So if you watch the way that horses are in nature, their head is down, and what they do is they'll eat some grass, and then they'll stretch their neck out, and they eat another blade of grass, and then they move one of their front feet, and then they reach their head out and take another blade of grass, and then they move their other front feet, and then their hind end catches up. When you put weight on a horse that moves like that, their back is dipped, and it's uncomfortable for them to carry your weight. So when we work in hand, what we're doing is trying to prepare the horse for carrying the weight of the rider through their posture. When you do work in hand, you can do it either on the cavesson or on a bit. When you start with a green horse, or if you're a new rider, you want to start on the cavesson. It's more forgiving for your mistakes. The benefit of a cavesson is that you're directly connected to the horse's spine. So to train her to have very good posture, the most efficient way to do that is through manipulating her spine. When you work in hand, your basic work in hand position, first of all, you're always going to want to carry a whip. A whip is just an extension of your hand. It's not designed to cause pain. You can tap the horse to get the horse's attention, but you don't want to strike the horse. The only instances where it's okay to strike the horse is if the horse bites, kicks at you, tries to pull you over on the lunge line. Any of those firm boundaries, you can correct the horse with the whip, but when you make the correction, it's always one time. That you never should lose your temper and keep overcorrecting. If I do have to make a severe correction, you'll see that I'll always pet the horse after I make the correction, because I still want to be friends with the horse, but that's also something that they're not allowed to do. So when we use the whips and work in hand, you want to try to use them more in a bowing kind of action or a pushing kind of action. When you hold the whip and you're working in hand, you want to have it very open and relaxed. You see how the whip just bounces in my hand, but I'm not doing it with my arm, which you see people do a lot in the beginning. So you don't need to really hold your whip, you just let it sit in the crook of your hand. Then you're gonna, if you're doing it on the cavesson like I'm showing you today, then you're gonna hold your extra lead in the same hand as your whip. Your other hand is gonna come up here on the end of the nose. If I'm working on the bridle, my position is gonna look like this. When I'm working on the cavesson, it's going to be like this. You always want to be coming out at 90 degrees on the end of the nose. If I come back like this, I'm behind the horse, and if I come like this, I'm ahead of the horse. So I always want to show the horse that I'm with them. When you are doing work in hand and you have a horse that's trained, what does a trained horse look like? So a trained horse is going to generally be square when they stop. So she's almost square. She's a little bit out on her right hind, but you'll notice most of the time when she stops that she stops at least close to square. You also want to look at the way that the weight is distributed across the shoulders. So if I drop an imaginary line from the middle of the shoulder straight down, don't move, Ada. So the way she just moved there, she fixed it. So here she's straight up and down, which is what you want. If a horse lays back, That's a horse that's preparing to have some sort of bad behavior like bucking, bolting, rearing. If you have a horse that leans forward, that's going to be a horse that's heavy on the forehand. So this is Ada. She's one of our lovely school horses that we've had in training for quite a long time. So she's pretty well trained, but she's very built on her forehand. So as I ask her head to come up, you can see the way that it changes, the way that the weight is distributed across her feet. And then what you want to look for when she moves is that she takes equal, even steps. So she's not splaying. So splaying is any time that the horse steps wide. So you see how when she comes underneath, that one she might have splayed a little bit. That when she steps with her shoulders, you see that her shoulders are pretty perpendicular, straight up and down. That's going to be the best way for her to carry the weight of the rider. If this top of the whip is her shoulder and then the bottom is her hoof, if she's doing any sort of wobbling over the hoof, that's going to be uncomfortable for her when she carries a rider. When you do moving the hind end, notice that she doesn't step really wide, which is what you want to see. When they step really wide, so in this case, if she stepped really wide with the right hind, that's going to make the right side of her back dip, and it's going to make her uncomfortable when she's carrying weight. So you can see that this horse generally stops pretty square and carries herself in taking a uniform, equal, even cadence step. So each step looks like the last step unless I ask her to change in her gait. But this is a horse that moves in a way that's going to be very comfortable for her to carry the weight of a rider. And here we have our friend Moon. He is a young thoroughbred that was broke to race before he came to us, but other than that had no training, and he is in training to be a school horse right now. When you watch Moon move, he doesn't move very balanced yet because he's green. So when you put the weight of the rider on a horse that moves the way that he does, it's first of all hard to sit. Even if you have a good seat, when he takes a big step and then a small step and then a fast step and then a slow step, as a rider sitting on his back, what's going to happen is you're going to kind of be jolted around by that movement, and that's going to make it uncomfortable for him to carry the weight of the rider. So when we do work in hand, what we want to try to do is get it so that he becomes very square and upright in his motion. When he moves, you'll see that well, first of all, see how he's standing kind of wonky right here. So if you put weight on a table that has legs like that, it's not going to be able to support the weight very well. So I'm going to try to square him up, standing still. And this horse has had quite a bit of training, so he squares up pretty quickly. Now see, he's pretty good there, but he's not quite straight on the front. So on the front, you want to see that the shoulder is directly over the hoof. That it shouldn't be leaning this way or leaning forward or leaning back. So that's actually pretty good, because if I drop an imaginary line down the middle of his shoulder blade, it's almost perpendicular, which is what you want to see. And then you also want to pay attention when you're working in hand to trying to get the base more narrow. So you want to get the hind legs closer to the front legs, and what that does is it lifts the horse's back. When you do work in hand, what you want to try to get is the horse to carry themselves through their core, because that's the most efficient way for them to carry the weight of the rider. So when I get him moving, what you'll see is that he doesn't take cadence steps, so he doesn't take uniform, equal, even steps, and you'll see that his shoulders will kind of lean, so he doesn't keep them very perpendicular, straight up and down like he is right now while he's moving. The other thing you're going to want to watch for is what he's doing in his hind end, and so you don't want to see any big, wide steps in the hind end, which is very common with green horses, and he does that a lot. For example, I'm on his left side. When he takes a big step out with his right hind, what that does is it dips the right side of his back. And that's going to be uncomfortable when he's carrying the weight of the rider. Let me get him moving a little bit So there's lots of different exercises you can do working in hand to try and help prepare the horse to carry the weight of the rider. So see, he didn't step as wide as he usually does, but he steps kind of wide on that left hind, or yeah, right hind, sorry. And then I'm gonna move the shoulders. That's actually pretty good. It's not perfect, so if you compare him to Ada, you'll see like there, for example, he leaned on the outside shoulder. So if you watch where the shoulder moves over this hoof, what it's doing is this. And again, you want the front legs to be very perpendicular even when he's moving. So I'm going to use my whip to try to encourage him to stand upright through his shoulders as he moves. Ah, that's better. Ah, very lean. So not only can he splay in the hind, he can also splay in the front. So splaying is any sort of wide stepping motion that they take. And then you also, like I said, you want to try to focus on getting the hind legs to come underneath him. So one of the things that we teach is a counted walk. So a slow cadence walk to try to get the hind legs to come underneath a little bit more like that. And so you can see that he has a little bit of weakness in his hind, and that's why he shakes his head too, because he's weak in his hind. So you want to try to build that strength from the ground. So when I ask him to shorten like I just did, that's going to strengthen his loins. We also in hand work on a lot of lengthening. So as I lengthen the walk, that's going to strengthen his hamstrings. And what you want to get is you want to get all this stuff working really well. So you want the horse to be straight, meaning that they're not overbent in the head and the neck, and they're not splaying in the hind or in the front. So you want them to be straight, you want them to be underneath themselves, and you want them to be standing upright. So again, see how he's not really standing very square? That's a little bit better. There we go. And so you want them to be square, standing still and in motion, have them coming underneath themselves, have themselves be straight, and you want them to start to take equal, even cadence steps to prepare for carrying the weight of the rider.